Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. Today I'm really excited. I have my new friend, Dr. Calvin Lawrence, with us. And Dr. Calvin, is an author and between you and me, an amateur barbecue enthusiast. We'll talk about that probably separately, but welcome to the show, Calvin. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. My background is 41 years in education. I spent a great deal of my life there, professional life. You name it, I did it. Everything I used to say, except I didn't drive the bus because I thought I would kill some people. Because not that I'm not a good driver, but I just get focused on certain things and I can't do all the things together. I'm a one kind of direction guy. So 41 years in ed, a lot of leadership experience. So part of the story about the happy leader is my leadership background, but a lot of that is I've had so many mentors in my life who've been great leaders, and they just kind of role model that effect for me. So where am I now? I'm a motivational speaker. I do the podcast like this one. I've also written that great book you see in the background, The Happy Leader. And I just love working with people and talking about leadership.
I love it. And I love your title, Significance Coach. I think it says a lot. So let's talk about the book first, because one of the things I realize with entrepreneurs, and I don't think you're going to be any different, we have a lot of passion projects and it tends to leak out into the world. And when somebody sees us, they're like, wow, you do a lot. And it's like, I don't know any other way. But let's start with the book. So how did the book evolve?
All right. So the book evolved, and this, Jeff, was not a lifetime mission of mine. You know, like some people have this lifetime goal. I want to do this. I want to go to this country. I want to climb Mount Everest. By the way, that's not one of those things that I want to ever do. But they've got these things that passions. And for me, it just evolved out of the last 5 or so years, and it goes right back into the entrepreneurial thing. So I lost a job right before COVID, right at that 5-year point that we're coming up on. And my wife said, you need to start your own business. You've been talking about it all your life. Now, I didn't have the book in mind when I started my own business, but I started that. And then my mom passed away about 3 years ago. Now that was really the impetus, because dad had already passed years prior. Mom left, and I'm like, I'm her legacy. My younger sister, is a legacy, but we got to keep this thing going on, because my mom was the lady who never met a stranger. She was happy all the time and a leader. And so I thought, how do I do it in a book? Maybe that's the best way, because I can tell these stories. And yes, by the way, along with her and my dad, I can tell all these other stories of these amazing people who impacted me on my journey. So this is the sad part. I started a book, first year, got maybe part of one chapter done. Then I stopped out, said, I can't do this. I'm not going to do it. Too many people are trying to tell me how to do it. I don't want to do it that way. And then after a year, I decided, coming back to it, mom deserves, dad deserves, everybody deserves, they deserve this book. It doesn't make a difference, a hill of beans, of how much this is going to hurt me or how gruesome this is going to be. I've got to get it done. And so the last 2 years, got it done, finished up right before 2025, didn't get it released until 2025 in February, and here we are today.
I love that. And for what it's worth, you'd be amazed how many entrepreneurs I talked to who accidentally wrote a book, or, you know, it was just, it just happened. And, and I think that's when you're called to something higher than yourself, a book falls out by accident.
That is a great way to put it, Jeff. Called to something higher than yourself. So it was higher than me. The purpose of the book was more than me. And I think, and this is going to show some of my bias, I think the book is a great book. It's a very good book. but it's great not so much because of me, but because of the purpose and the people. So those two things, purpose and people, really just pushed it over the edge and pushed me over the edge in terms of being able to complete it.
And I love that you did it to honor your parents. I think a lot of people have that myth of I'm a self-made man, and it's like, nope, it takes a village.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Oh man.
Well, let's back up a little. So I'm going to assume that your PhD was in education. How did that come about? And then we'll talk about the evolution to you being an entrepreneur.
Okay. So I'll give my sister credit on this because she's a medical doctor and she received her medical degree, a long time ago. And when I say that, she has had her medical degree since I've been in Texas, and that's 37 years. So she walked the stage. They had this music, I never will forget it, St. Elmo's Fire. If you ever remember that, that series, and the music is playing and these doctors are walking out and they're walking into wherever they're going to go in life. They're going to go all kinds of different places all over the world.
Yeah.
And so I was thrilled by that. Never really told her that, but I think the closer you get to some of these milestones, the easier it becomes. So I, at the time, had not got my master's. I received my master's when I came down here to Texas, and that was whatever it was, a little bit over 35 years ago. But in the back of my head, I had this thing. I was getting closer, and I thought, it would be great one day to have that doctorate degree. And in education, maybe unlike some of the other fields, the more education, the better. The more you have, the better. The more opportunities you have when you get the terminal degree or whatever it might be in. Mine just happened to be in leadership. I enjoy leadership. And so I got it, but I had people who inspired me, and that's been my life story basically. Jeff, I was inspired to get that degree. Didn't really have that on my agenda like the book in the beginning stages, but the closer you get, the easier it becomes. And then if you have some people who walk that path before you, that's a really good point, then it becomes easier for you to say, hey, if she got it or if he got it, maybe I should look into this. So that's what happened.
I love it. And I think you and I both resonate with the lighthouse image. And I think when you accomplish something, good for you, that's nice. Yes. And then there's that obligation to shine the light for others. And I think you do that very naturally. And clearly your sister did that for you. So
yes. Yeah. And she's my baby sister. She's a couple of years younger than me. That lighthouse, I'm gonna go back to that lighthouse analogy because you hit on it so well, and and maybe that's why we connected right off the bat. And then this is the Lighthouse podcast. So these Lighthouse Sessions, here I am with a lighthouse in my background, but the metaphors are so deep and rich. There's so much to the lighthouse experience, and to have a lighthouse, and I've had all these lighthouses in my life. Some were physical and some were, whatever you want to call it, but they were there to guide me and direct me. And then here's the deal, Jeff, and I don't know if we touched on it yet, but you have, I think, to a degree. It's like, okay, now I'm a lighthouse. I become a lighthouse once we get to that goal, and then you're guiding and helping direct people to get to the next whatever it is they need to get to, and it makes it more impactful and powerful for them.
I love it. And I'll share one of my favorite quotes is, I can't remember the source, but the quote is, if I've seen further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants.
Wow. Yeah.
And, it perfectly encapsulates what you were saying about honoring your parents. Our accomplishments are built on the backs of our ancestors. And,
yes.
I look at it, in Alberta here, we have a lot of Indigenous culture. And the other one is we don't inherit things from our ancestors. We borrow them from our children. And so I love that, I love cultures where they look at it from, let's honor our ancestors and let's leave a legacy for our kids.
For our children. Yeah. Wow. That's really great. That's a great way to look at it. When you mention that, and I think about, my impetus for the book, I kind of said a little bit about that, but a lot of it was about honoring ancestors. And if you read the first couple of chapters, there's a lot of honoring going on there in terms of standing on shoulders of people who passed, because they had it a lot tougher than I did. When you mention the indigenous people, I'm thinking about, African Americans here in the United States, and I was born in 1959. My dad was born in the 1914, and wow, the struggles he had to go through, mom included, she came a little bit later, that they had to go through to order to get me to where I was. And I mentioned how we were just three generations removed from slavery. That to me is powerful. And when I say it, and I don't know if everybody gets it the way I get it, but I know it impacts me. I know it impacts a certain segment of the folks who read that book, that to be able to do what I do now, it's because of people who walk and struggle before me. And I don't take that lightly. And so then it gives you the impetus for now moving forward. What do I have to share? Is maybe not as great as some of those folks, but I'm going to do what I can do to pass this thing. It's kind of like passing the baton, passing it forward to those folks, right, to the next generation.
Well, and I think that's, personally, I've been to the Martin Luther King Museum, and you can't be there and not be touched by the gravity of it. It's amazing. And again, I think when we come back, we'll talk about mostly entrepreneurs. We are resilient. We take adversity and we turn it into opportunity. And I think what I love about being an entrepreneur is you can serve other people. And just by existing, our mission, our mandate is we're trying to add value to the world.
Yes. And let me throw this in while I'm thinking about it. I tease people. I say, when you get this age, you got to throw in your points when you can remember them, because if you don't write them down, you might forget them. That's kind of sad, but that's true. That's true. So when I think about this thing about entrepreneurs, and this is for somebody out there, somebody will get this. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. And I even said this when I started this road to entrepreneurship. I had spent 41 years of following directions and other people telling me what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And it's a mindset shift that I had to make. It didn't happen all of a sudden overnight. It happened over time. In fact, even when I had become an entrepreneur, I still thought like I thought as someone's worker. And I'm looking around, maybe metaphorically as well as actually. I'm looking around trying to figure out who's going to tell me what to do. Well, nobody's going to tell you what to do if you're the entrepreneur. Now you're the guy making those decisions. So the first just like with the book, the first couple of years, it took me to shift my mind over to where I needed to be in terms of now I'm making the decisions. If I don't do it, it doesn't get done. If I don't make that decision, it doesn't happen. If I don't move now on something that needs to happen 2 years down the road, it may take me 4 years before I get there. So I've got to go ahead and make those decisions, and whether they're right or wrong, even if they're wrong, I can still learn from them. But I made a mental shift, Jeff, to get into this thing, and now I'm kind of there. I'm kind of there. I'm a lot more there than I was 4 or 5 years ago.
I love that. And I think, honestly, if I may, just knowing you, the few minutes I have, you were probably born an entrepreneur. You just needed to, I call it the awakening. You had to awaken to it, because, we can get really distracted by other things. And, it's fascinating, because I talk to people and like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. I just work in medicine, or I just work in education. And it's like, but you're changing your field. Right. You're an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's the perception, and then the definition. You have a better definition, a broader definition. There's a narrow, and I think I had that narrow definition too. But thank you for that.
Well, and honestly, Calvin, it took me a lot of years to I didn't even realize I was a business owner until I'd been in business probably 10 years. I'm a little slow on that sometimes, but the aha for me was, understanding the difference between a business owner. You buy something and you run it, no offense to the franchise owners, but you let someone else create the idea, and then you come in and you're kind of the guardian of the business.
Right.
Whereas an entrepreneur will take something perfectly good, tear it apart to see how it works, and then rebuild it 10 times better because, well, there's a bunch of extra parts I didn't need.
Right.
And I think, the way I look at it, if you look at nonprofits, there are some entrepreneurs in that world. They're trying to find better ways to do things. You look into the research space, they're the ones saying, what if?
Right.
And there's a difference between the person who says, what if, and the person who's staring into the microscope saying, how do I prove this? But I think, entrepreneurs, we just naturally, whether we mean to or not, we break things because we're curious and we want to make them better.
Wow. That's a really good one. I can look back into part of my history, and I did break things probably unintentionally because I thought that it could be better than it was. And so when you say what you said about it was always there, I just had to get to a certain point. Yeah, I did, because there were times even in my walk, and I even maybe shared in the book in a roundabout way, that there were things that I did and looked at differently than the people who were there. And I really wanted to change it because I don't like Band-Aid approaches. I like to make a change that's effective and it's long lasting, as opposed to just doing something to get over. And so maybe that's part of the definition of an entrepreneur as well.
Well, and the beautiful thing is, I think entrepreneur is a spectrum. I'm going to use that phrase. And the beautiful thing is we can all be on the spectrum, and it doesn't take anything away from anybody else.
Yes. Great. That's great.
And, I feel like that would resonate because you seem to be really about inspiring others. And I think that's what I see. I live in terror that my boys will fall into the trap of, grow up, get an education, get a good job, and wait for retirement. And it's oh my God, that's my nightmare. Like my wife is like, wow. Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm like, no.
That's security, right?
Yeah.
That's security. Yeah. I think, what was it? Somebody said this, and I don't know if it was a famous guy. I'm like you, this is a quote, but it's not a quote, but it's something that somebody said. It was like, women look for security, and they need to because they are women, and guys a little bit different, but there's similarities too. But that security thing is always there. And then if I've worked like I worked for the time that I did, it was always this war between security and the other side of it, the security, and then going out and trying to do it and master something and putting, it's really a risk taking, because that's what another piece of the spectrum to entrepreneurship is, taking a risk. You go out, you do it, you try it, no matter what. If you do it, you're gonna learn something, even if you fail. And if you think about the people who are, I'll use a Thomas Edison, who probably failed, I don't know how many thousands of times before he actually got it, then it makes a lot of sense to say, hey, those failures added up to something. He learned every time he made a mistake, he X'd out that step, and then it was something else, and until he got to the one that was the right one.
Yeah. And, famously, I've learned 10,000 ways to not invent the light bulb is what I've read. And I think, it's fascinating, Calvin. And I just had this aha moment that a lot of the inventions in history that led to the stability and security of humanity were probably invented by women. You know,
Wow. Yeah.
the fire was probably tamed because someone was sick of their tribe dying from undercooked meat. You know,
Yeah.
farming was about stability of the food source.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I have this weird feeling if we time traveled, we'd find that a lot of the security type innovations came from female leadership.
From women, right? Yeah. That's a great take on that piece. I had never thought about it that way, but that's probably true.
Well, the cool part is we don't even have to prove it. We can just
we just enjoy it. Yeah.
I mean, if you can point to some time in history and say this is the first person who farmed, great. But I feel like it predates writing and language and a lot of things. But
I would think.
So between you and me, I like to ponder what if scenarios and my kids and I in the car. So my greatest joy is every day I drive my kids to school and every day I pick them up. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure most people are like, how was your day? What's going on? I bring up really weird, random things and it's a free-for-all discussion. And I love watching them light up because I'm not telling them what to think. I'm not judging them. It's just, I'm curious. How do you feel about this? So today we're probably going to discuss who invented fire. Was it a man or a woman? Doesn't matter the answer, but it's a fun
it doesn't
debate.
matter, but at least it stirs up a conversation. It does. Yeah.
So
awesome.
So now you've pivoted. So this is so entrepreneurial, and I love that you're just aha moment now understanding it. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned you lost a job, and I'm going to guess that was a struggle, a dark period, as an entrepreneur in training, you were probably a little doubtful. When did you know that you were going to be okay without a job?
Well, I have to give you a little bit of backstory. So I had lost a job or walked off a couple of jobs at least 6 or 7 times in my life. In fact, there's a whole chapter that I devoted to that. I call them the desert times. Well, one of the kids that I talked to says, well, they talk about dips now. So you had these dips. So I could have titled it dips, but that last time that we're talking about, that was the impetus for me just saying, that's it. I'm done. I'm ready to move on. Was probably because of those other times that I had lingered in some despair, Jeff. But what I did this time, and I made a joke out of it, but it was true. What I did was I gave myself 24 hours to have what I call, or the Americans kind of call, a pity party. I had 24 hours one day to feel sorry for myself. I did that, whatever it was, whatever I did that day, and then I moved on. And so I can tell you exactly, it was only one day. And I did that, and then it was time to start working on, okay, what's the next step? How do I get this out? What do I need to learn? I needed to go attend seminars and anything that was free on the internet, LinkedIn, whatever. Boy, I was there. I even got my first business contract because I went to a seminar and the guy had these templates for contracts. So I said, okay, I got you. I'm going to hit that and I'll just tweak it to use the way. So yeah, it was very brief that last time. Although I can think of 1 year in particular, and I was at the college level when I didn't get a position. I didn't get fired, but it was such a letdown that for almost a year I sulked. It was a wasted year. Yeah, it was a wasted year, a wasted year of my life to sulk about a position that I didn't get. That maybe it was better that I didn't have it. But yeah.
I love your language around that because first of all, acknowledging how we feel about things is the only way we get through it.
Right.
And I'm fascinated because you use the word sulk, but I'm just going to say you were probably incubating. But
you're nice, Jeff. Nicer than me.
Well, the funny thing, and I'm just going to say this: we're always nicer to someone else than we are to ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think we sort of, especially entrepreneurs, we look at our potential and we're willing to kick our asses and say, "Get up, you lazy bugger." Whereas most people be like, "Wow, you took a beating. You may just,
you need
just
to
lay there for a minute."
Yeah.
I'm sure the boxing greats, name your favorite boxer. They'd probably get up and they're like, "Oh, I should go to the gym," and it's like, "No, you got a concussion. Just lay there for a bit." And I think entrepreneurs, we do that. It's like, I liken it to back in the days, the Roman gladiators. We go in the arena, we're often anonymous because we've got our mask on,
Right.
I'm the entrepreneur, and we either achieve victory or we get our butts kicked, and we're
Right.
either cheered or booed.
Right.
But nobody knows who's behind the mask, and then we leave and it's like, okay, let's go back and lick our wounds a little. But I think most entrepreneurs, what sets them apart is they get up tomorrow and they go back to the arena.
Correct.
And figuratively, because sometimes we need a year to sulk, and sometimes we need I allow myself 2 days for pity parties. And then it's like, okay, is this helping me in any way? And the answer is almost always no.
Almost no. Yeah, almost always no. Right.
So I think you and I are very much alike, and I can tell by your energy that you are very resilient. So, but if I may, I'm just going to say that using the lighthouse analogy, you were lighting up the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was draining your light. Whereas I think now you are doing what you were meant to do, and your light shines brighter because it's in the right direction.
I think you're right. And let me throw something in on that, because I've thought about it a lot. And those were the wrong things, but maybe it was the right time to do the wrong things. And this is a weird take on it, but it's like everything that I went through, it's almost as if I needed to go through it in a roundabout way to get the circumstances down. Let me see if I can give you a good example. So when I talk to people about education and making choices and all this other stuff, and especially that group that's coming out, they're young and vibrant. That's your sons are going to get to that age where then they got to make some of these critical decisions. I love that group, by the way. That's my favorite group. And it's almost as if I didn't get all that other negativity, and I got it at all the levels, Jeff. I mean, when I say K-12 to higher ed, and the higher ed all the way from community college all the way up to the doctoral, I got it all. So if I don't get that, then I can't use my memory. And somebody was talking about memories the other day, how much we use it. How I can't use my memory to now determine or to share some of the things, the issues of life that may be able to help somebody, maybe avoid some things, or maybe make a critical decision that they might not have made without that piece of information or a piece of experience. So it's almost as if when I think about it, maybe it was predestined for me to have some of that, most of that, because I needed to, because now I can share it in a way that I would never have shared it. It's almost like somebody used to say this about they didn't have a testimony but you got to have these experiences to be able to share. And so I have it now to be able to share, and some of it's in the book, but then there's more that I can share, because the book is just like a tip of the iceberg in terms of what I had to experience.
I love it. And one of the quotes that resonates with me, and it's often debated about the value of the quote, but the quote is, turn your mess into your message. And I think what people miss is the steps between having the mess and having the message. It's kind of like a rock tumbler polishing rocks. Right. You've got to find the gems within your mess, and you've got to find the diamond that was forged in that pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And I think people want to skip from the mess to the message, and it's like, no.
It's like even I'll say people, and then I'll be real specific. Leaders like to do that too, because they like to skip all the way to I want to get to the end results, but there's a lot of messiness before you get to the end. And if you can do the mess right, then you really get a great end result. But most people don't want to go through it. They don't want to deal with it because they don't want to deal with it. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. A friend of mine, and I have no idea his source, but his favorite quote is everybody wants to get to heaven, but nobody wants to die first. And it's like, oh, that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, they don't.
And honestly, I think for me personally, I spend a lot of time making messes, and now I realize, and this was very freeing, I made the messes, therefore I'm the guy to clean them up. But the messes I made were always when I was arrogant enough to think I knew what was best.
Yeah.
And then just recently, in the last few years, I've learned to surrender to the higher powers. Right. And I realized that the messes weren't messes, they were lessons. And
lessons, right.
I was just so stubborn. The universe, a friend of mine says the universe starts with a feather. It'll, brush your cheek, and then it'll come down with a piece of concrete on your head, because I'm the guy that needs the concrete.
Oh, not you, Jeff. You're that soft guy, though, with the feather.
Nope. I have a very hard head, and I can put it through a cement wall all day long until the universe says, Jeff, what are you doing? So I'm stubborn. I need to get the lesson the hard way. And
yeah. There are a lot of us like that. I would tend to agree with you. There are a lot of us, we have to get it the hard way. Now, once I get the lesson, and I always used to tell my students this, once I get it, I've got it. I don't have to have that blow on the head of that concrete come down there again.
Yeah, once was enough. Thank you.
It may need to hit me one time, but then once I get it, I'm good.
I wish I could say that, but there's certain lessons I think I repeated the mistake.
You had to learn
at least every decade.
Right. Okay.
But as you get older, I think in my 20s it was the concrete upside the head. Now I'm working on the feather. But
yeah. There you go. I got you.
So it's And one of my other favorite quotes is Winston Churchill, who says, "When you're going through hell, keep going."
Keep going, right?
And going. I haven't found the proof of it, but I've also heard the line that apparently was left out of the famous quote. And the rumor is the famous ending was, "And then once you get through, help others."
Yeah.
And I can't find a source for that, but I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. I like that. Add that little piece to the end of it.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Once you get through all of that, then you help others, and you've had enough. Now you've got that piece of experience, or whatever you want to call it, that you can help somebody else get through.
And it's fascinating because I've done a lot of interviews with entrepreneurs over the years. This latest round of the Lighthouse Sessions is brand new, but one of the things I've learned is that true entrepreneurs are all about their legacy. It's kind of, we honor the legacy we receive, we honor the responsibility to leave a legacy behind us. But I also find there's a very deep spiritual component where we're guided by something we can't always explain. And I'm not here to decide, is it God, universe, whatever. That's a whole different podcast. But one of the things I found is true entrepreneurs have this certainty in them that they're on this path for a reason.
Right.
Would you agree with that based on the people you've met?
I would agree totally with the people that I met. In fact, when I look at some of those folks that I wrote about in the book, almost to a man and woman, they were connected to a higher power, to an understanding, to a faith, to a belief system that made them so that they knew it was more than just them, and then it was more than just what's in it for me. For sure, it wasn't just what's in it for me, because if it had been that way, then I don't know that they would ever have connected with me in the way that they did. But I would totally agree with that, Jeff.
I love that. Now, I think let's talk about how people can collaborate with you, what working with you looks like, because let's face it, part of the reason people come on podcasts, you've got a book you want people to read. I like you, and I'd like to introduce you to people in my world. What does working with you look like? Where do you start? Where do you end? What's it look like?
Well, a good place to start is at my website. It's calvinlawrencespeaks.net. When they work with me, they could work with me from a consultant standpoint. They could work with me from a speaker standpoint. They could work with me. Just reading the book might give them a little bit more of an idea of who I am, what my experiences have been, if I have what they need or what they might be looking for, and to come alongside them and work with them. So, and it will start there. Yeah, I'll stop right there. Yeah.
No need to worry about stopping. That's great. So what kind of things are you challenging? What are you curious about right now? What's the future of Calvin Lawrence looking like?
Well, look, the future is in what I'm really curious about is how I'm going to make this thing work with regards to my mission. The biggest mission that I have is bridging gaps. And bridging gaps, by that I mean some relational or racial divides that we have in this country. And I always try to start right where I am. So it's like in my community, what can I do? How can I make it better? It's like, and I definitely have a quote for this one, but it's like when you do it, are you making big enough impact? Is it significant enough? And you got one of my things at the beginning, because I brought that from someone else that I met about significance coaches. And I was going to be a success coach, and then it switched over to significance because I think significance is more important. So to be significant is you really, and this is the old Arthur Ashe quote. I'll give you this one. The Arthur Ashe was, of course, if you remember him, was the great tennis player who wrote better maybe than he played tennis. So he wrote this quote, and it's impactful. He said, "You start where you are, you use what you have, and do what you can." And so most of us, we started out with this, where people get stymied. It's so overwhelming. Entrepreneurship is like that. And then they just kind of get in this deep freeze, or they kind of get paralyzed with the fear or whatever that they can't do it. But everybody on the planet can at least start where they are, because you're somewhere. Yep. And then what do you have in your toolbox? Well, I know, we talk more. I will be able to figure out what Jeff's got in his toolbox, vice versa. You figure out more about me, and then it's done. And then you can do, and then where can you plug in? And so it's about now, you taking these actions. And so that's where I'm at really with regards to taking action, with regards to seeing how it spreads. The book is helping to spread it just a little bit more and I thought it might do that. Someone had told me, when you write that book, it will change some things. It may not be, it may not get you to where you're at the Tesla level or all this other stuff that, whether you're and that's not important to me anyway. But in terms of getting to where you have now reached people that you would not normally reach, yes. And so if I can do that, and then if I can get somebody to just think about how they treat people in that way that they treat them, and then not judging the person by the cover or the color or their socioeconomic. If I can do that, then when I leave this place, it'll be everything worth the while. So that's kind of where I'm at. In regards to the business is a little different, but that is where the mission is at. Yes.
Well, and honestly, that's going to be one of my new favorite quotes now, because I think a lot of people, who am I? I'm not going to have a big enough impact. And, the reality is I work with a lot of people who, my story's not interesting enough to write a book.
Yeah.
And I always say, how dare you? Because somebody out there needs to hear your story, because it will resonate with them. And, I think books are kind of like a potluck. If you put your story together, that's your signature dish. Right. Somebody won't eat if you don't write it.
Somebody won't eat if you don't write it. And you never know how your story is going to touch. Because I've had all this feedback, and anybody who writes a book wants feedback, right? They want to figure out, what did you like about it? What you not like about it? And it's funny how, and this, Jeff, you got some sons, they're going to be different. It's funny how what touch one doesn't touch the other one. And but you put it out there. It's kind of like the Lighthouse effect. If I go back to the Lighthouse, I'm seeing an image on the screen, and it's like the Lighthouse does different things for different people. So there's security, there's safety, there's welcome in the lighthouse. But then it's also saying it's like warning, move back because the rocks might be over here. And then there's something else for somebody else. But it touches people where their needs are, what you need for that moment. And I'm hoping that the book does the same thing, that it touches, and then the message that comes out of that is the same thing. It touches people. If they want more, hopefully they'll be able to get more, or they'll seek more. It'll give you the entree to have that. I love what you do with your sons. They have that deeper conversation. So you start having a conversation. Because another friend of mine had, this is his quote, CEO, his name was Robert Ray. He said, everything begins with a conversation. So if you start that conversation, who knows where it's going to go? You may become lifelong friends. You may start a corporation together. People have done that, by the way, have started a group together, started a thing, whatever. So, but yes, yeah.
I love it. And, it's funny. I'll share when I was first a father, I had a lot of pressure because I was like, oh, what do I have to teach them? And then one day I realized that I'm not here to teach them. They're here to teach me. And it is amazing when I stopped worrying about what do I teach them. It was what can we learn together? And, it's just being curious. So I think curiosity is probably ingrained in you as well. And I just want to take this time to say thank you so much for being a guest on the show. My audience is going to love you. And we're going to have more conversations. I can almost guarantee it.
I'm looking forward to that. Barbecue, anything that have. We didn't even get on desserts. I think you could be a dessert man too. So we'll get to some of that.
I love it. Honestly, my son, my youngest, he jokes that I'm a carnivore. And if you want to talk about different ways to prepare meat, I'm sorry, I'm not a vegetarian.
You're that guy. Yeah.
I was not built to be a vegan. I honor those who decide or who are.
Same here. I've got a best friend. She's vegan, but we can coincide in the same room and space together because we can.
And you know what the beautiful thing is? Nothing I do takes away from anything anyone else does. So,
correct.
But truly, thank you for taking the time to hang out with me and sharing your light with my audience.
Well, thank you for this Lighthouse session. It has illuminated my day, my week. Now I'm ready to go.
Love it.